Hello, everyone. My name is Beverly Knox Davis, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the A Brighter Day podcast. We are super excited that you have taken this moment to be with us, but more importantly, it is our guest for today. You are in for a real treat. Look who we have with us. I finally nailed her down to get her here. She's so busy, she's everywhere. But Miss Jessica Lefkowitz. Hello, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Beverly, for having me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Oh my gosh, we're in for a real treat. Now, this part of the discussion today will just embrace things that normally people may not want to talk about. But we're going to talk about it today because it's important and it's a population that is super important. And we don't need for them to be invisible, do we?
That's correct.
Hence the name of your organization, which is what?
Hearts for the Invisible Charlotte Coalition.
All right. So just some amazing things will be discussed today. So thank you all for joining us on all of our platforms. So, Miss Jessica, tell us about you, because people see you all over. I learned some stuff from our very first conversation that I didn't know anything about. So tell us about your background, your family, who is Jessica and what is all about, everything that you do and all of that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. I am a transplant from Providence, Rhode Island. I moved here in 1994 to go to college. I started off at John C. Smith, but I graduated from UNC Charlotte. During that time while I was in school, I paid for my education by bartending. And up until the pandemic, that's exactly what I was doing. I had been bartending in hotels for, at that point, about 20 years. And when the pandemic happened, started or whatever, I was at home watching CNN. And I love telling this, watching Dr. Fauci and all his stuff that was making me very, very,
right?
very, very paranoid. My mental health was not that great. But then I saw a video of a friend of mine driving through what is now known as Tent City or the North End encampment. And that kind of led me to where I am right now. So I saw that video and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never seen people living in tents. That was very, very new. And to me, it just didn't make any sense. It felt very third world to me. Especially for such a wealthy city, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. So I finally got the nerve to leave my house to go to Walmart to buy snacks and lunch meat to make sandwiches, just to bring a meal down there and just to kind of talk to some folks and see if there was anything else that I could do. So I did that with my baby brother at the time. I think he was like 25. I think that would have been a teenager. And we went and we passed out. We went tent to tent, introducing ourselves. And I left that day thinking this is just not enough. Like, I think everybody, when you volunteer to some degree, I think there's that natural instinct you want to feel like you've done something, like you've made an impact. And I did not feel that day. So I went back the next day and I did it again. And then I went the day after that and the day after that. And I served food out there every single day. And this is Monday through Sunday for about 8 weeks, in addition to doing like supply drops. So I was there every day. I mean, somebody needed a blanket or somebody needed jeans. Somebody needed help with a resume, a ride to work, a ride to an interview, all the things.
Funded?
No.
Wow.
This is just in the first few months of the pandemic. This is when I was laid off and I thought I was going to go back.
Laid off.
I was laid off.
Y'all catch all these nuggets.
Yeah,
right?
I was working at the Westin Charlotte at the time. But I was laid off. And then, so I did that for about 10 months. Unfunded is correct. I did use my social media to help me to get things. I mean, I think at one point it was some really, really treacherous weather out there, and I was able to get like 150 sleeping bags within hours.
Wow.
And alongside with tents.
You got a good network, right?
Yeah, like I think well, people were home, right? They were home. Everybody was still trying to figure this mess out and really trying to understand what was going to be next for everybody. But I'm sure everybody understood that sleeping outside in that way was inhumane. Absolutely. And people wanted to help. So there was a lot of traction. And as time went on through those months, other groups started to come, churches and groups started to come, and with a lot of those groups, we started to kind of collaborate, so we weren't duplicating services. So it was like, oh, I gave John a tent yesterday, or I did, so he doesn't need another one. We already got it done. Things like that, but there was a lot of coordination that came into play. And then February of 2021, that's when the abatement from Mecklenburg County came on, and we had to the county was putting together a plan to get everybody out of Tent City and into motel shelters. So we participated in those activities. Because we had such rapport with the neighbors that lived in Tent City, our participation in that project was essential. So we were able to help people match roommates together, so people weren't stuck in a room with somebody they didn't know. Kind of keeping couples together if we could. There wasn't, thankfully, any children in Tent City during that time, but there had been children that were in there during that tenure or whatever. But during the time of the abatement, there wasn't, thankfully. And I continued to do that for 3 years until
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, 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 Mecklenburg County put out an RFP for a lead street outreach team, which I'm going to be very, very honest. I did not believe it was going to be me. I was not that confident. But I remember I brought all my nonprofit buddies, and we all watched the presentation together, because you had to be present for the presentation of the RFP to even be considered, to even apply. Oh, wow. So I was like 10 of us in a room, and you also had to have a connection to a mental health provider. So that was, I wasn't there yet. So I didn't think I had it, but it didn't stop me from going out every day grinding, and every single day. Every single day.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
It's not about the lights, cameras, action, even the funding. If it's in your heart and it's something that, God has told you that this is what you should do, then you just do it, and a way is made. So that's what it sounds like has happened for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So based on all of that, tell us where you are now and other things that you are involved with now.
So when that RFP came out, obviously had intended on applying, but about 3 weeks into that process, a member with Mecklenburg County sent an email to the folks that were in that original meeting, and let them know that they were going to let them know what their decisions were in regards to the RFP. And the RFP process hadn't even ended yet, so wow. This was very unique. And then I started getting texts very early in the morning saying, is this you? Because I was the only one that wasn't in that email chain. And so I called 8:00 in the morning in my bonnet and my robe, and I called, her name is Karen Pelletier, with Mecklenburg County. She's an amazing woman. I called her up, and before she said, yes, it's true. And you want to talk about somebody losing it?
Oh my God.
I'm going around, just running laps around my island in my kitchen, screaming and hollering, crying, like just in disbelief. Because this was, so with this RFP, there was things that you had to do. You had to put a multidisciplinary outreach team together. It had to have like peer supports, clinicians, social workers, and put all this together, right? None of which I had any experience doing. I had experience. I can sling drinks. I was a bartender for 25 years, but I definitely wasn't ready for that. And then, again, partnering with a mental health agency, I had to also, during the term of that original contract, was to put together a strategic outreach plan for the entire county, which I did. And just continuously building partnerships, which also was done. But that RFP was for $650,000.
Wow.
And I was able to put an amazing team together. And in that time, I think our first 2 years, let me see if I can remember this, because KT's looking at me and I know she's going to. In our first 2 years of funding, and this is with on average about 4 case managers, we served over 1,100 individuals.
Wow.
We got almost 700 people off the streets into a place not meant for you. So into a sheltered environment. So that could have been into transitional housing, maybe getting them a bus ticket back to their parents in Texas. It could be, or getting them into the shelter system. And then we had roughly 250 people that we got into permanent housing. And a good percentage of that number was actually children, which that number was, which is, in hindsight, that should sound great, but it's really not great because that means these children were sleeping outside. So that's not an ideal thing, but we are definitely seeing that there is a rise in family homelessness over the last few years. And I can say that just from when I started to now, it's problematic. The way families are losing their housing and entering into the homeless space. It's wild.
I know when we spoke, I started telling you about the homeless population or the unhoused in this area, which is the historic Hoskins community. And to have watched, the cycles that have happened around here. Spoke to you about the raceway off of Roswell Ferry down here, and it was just a whole space that it felt like that third world country you walk into, and they had the fire going and the drums, and everybody's just outside, and it didn't matter what temperature it was. It was just so many people. And then, of course, the property owner got all these citations because everything was so dirty. And then, a lot of things shifted, and he was forced to gate that area. Well, I mean, it didn't do anything but push them on the perimeter of that property, so they're still there. Yes. And then we have people that live by the bridges right off of Roswell Ferry, which trickles into the neighborhoods. Mental health is real. We've had to address, someone that was just having some manic moments running down that street naked. So many things were involved. And I just felt like, I'm screaming that the homeless population is growing in this area and nobody is listening to me. What do we do for these individuals? We have the food pantry at the park. Couldn't keep anything in the food pantry. Trying to just assist, but wanting to be safe. How do we do that? So we have resources that have lived here for forever that know everybody. So that's how we communicate and, get everybody on one accord. But when I mentioned this to you, you didn't even know about what's going on in Hoskins. And that's upsetting. Someone like Jessica should know what's happening in this area.
But I will say to that point that the homeless population is growing in all areas.
It is.
It just is. Now, because I didn't know doesn't mean it wasn't known about. But what I will say is I'm glad it is on my radar now. So that we can have people to start coming out this way. But yeah, did you put the referral in?
Today. So much to do. I know. Okay. It's been a crazy week.
It's okay. We just got back to work today.
We'll get it together. But yeah, she's already coaching me, you all. So we just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can for our neighbors, and they are our neighbors. We had an event back in October, and we had to get CMPD to kind of help us because where we were in the Eva B. Barber Park, and that's home for a lot, where we were setting up. It was just, people had turned the picnic table. That was the bed. So we had a whole situation before we could even set up in that area. And then, of course, prostitution and drugs. It's just so much that comes along with the people being unhoused. So tell us, at this stage where we are, what could we do now to help make a difference and to help those? Because it's seriously cold outside, even today, you need a jacket on, you need a coat on. And some of these folks they're just like on the ground, they have their things, but I didn't see any blankets and tents and things like that. So what can we do in this area to help those that are unhoused?
Yeah. So I know that in some instances, like as you mentioned, some of the mental health concerns that folks are a little bit uncomfortable addressing somebody and maybe even trying to show some support. But this is what I will say. Even when my staff goes out, myself or my staff go out into the community and we're approaching somebody that we don't know, the main thing is you just always want to think of treating that person the way you want yourself treated, right? Yeah. So you want to do a nice, pleasant introduction. Okay. In that introduction, that person's likely going to let you know where they stand and what and it's really going to guide you on what your next move should be. So if it should be leave me alone, then you probably should leave them alone. If it's like if they seem like they want to engage with you, then you can go to the next step. Well, hey, buddy, I have some hand warmers with me and a sleeping bag. Would you care for any of this stuff?
Okay.
That's how it's done. It's not like you never assume with the unhoused population, because every single person is experiencing something very different, and you just never know what state they're in. So I don't want people to be afraid to help.
Right.
Because I think that's also problematic, because then that just sets the notion that people are dangerous when they're really not. And then that makes things more difficult for the person that's actually the most vulnerable in the situation, which is the unhoused person. So I think it's very important to just kind of calm down. And if you're not comfortable approaching somebody, go have a buddy with you. Mm-hmm. Don't do it alone. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell you in the almost 6 years I've been doing this, I've never had anybody lash out at me from trying to give them a cup of coffee or a cocoa or a sleeping bag. Never, not one time. Okay. Have somebody said, "Get out my face" before? Yes. And I just, guess what? Exit stage left. You know what I mean? Because in that moment, just because I'm ready to talk to that person doesn't mean that person's ready to talk to me in that moment. So it's and that goes with anybody. You have days when you're just like, I don't want to talk to anybody.
That's right.
Right? So, and they have those days too. And you think about the cycle that they're in, when that instability of not having housing, and for many people for a significant amount of time, you're not always going to have the best attitude. Mm-hmm. But when you have consistency, like what our organization provides for folks, once they get under the case management and they have somebody that's holding their hand through the process of hopefully guiding them into a housing situation, things shift quite quickly. Yeah. You see something different. So I would say, the county's been funding this type of work, funding us for the last couple of years, and that's obviously not sustainable. I feel at this point, if there's communities that are experiencing high numbers of homelessness, HOAs need to put money together to fund a position from our organization, to have somebody that's out there dedicated to their communities. That is the way to do this. We have the data, we know what we can do, and we're not police, but we do know how to make these connections to get people where they need to be. Okay. So that's my honest advice. I mean, I didn't mean to come on here and plug a check, but it's like,
hey,
somebody's got to do this work, right?
Exactly.
These are very vulnerable people who they need somebody to guide them. They need that handhold, and they need that one-on-one. And unless you can do that and do it with zero judgment, and not being your feelings while you're doing it, you're gonna still see this cycle. Now, as far as people moving into neighborhoods and shifting around neighborhoods, well, that's happening because they're not in housing, right? So you move somebody's shelter, right? And they're already outside, and you kick them out of this location, they're just going to find another location that's probably likely to be trespassing again, right? And they're just going to keep going until they circle back right where they started. Right. So the only way to avoid that is housing. It just is. I mean, it's not even shelter. Now, in the whole shelter thing, I think our community looks at it like we're in the movies. Like, oh, everybody has a place, every shelter spot for it. No, that's not true. We absolutely do not have enough shelter for all the people who are in need of it. And then you have people who will never go to shelter because of their past or their trauma. Like, if you've been to prison, and going into a shelter feels like what? Prison. Yeah. And there's a lot of trauma that could have come along with that. So it is all situational. You can't put homelessness into a one-size-fits-all box, but you can solve for it. And the one way to do that is housing.
Wow. Hello, and thank you so very much for tuning in to part 1 of a 2-part series of the A Brighter Day podcast. We thank you so very much, and don't forget to tune in to part 2.